Welcome to OState Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad that you decided to tune in on a beautiful Sunday evening here in the big town. Sitting here in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Actually, I'm not in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I'm in Guthrie, but hey, Oklahoma State is who we're going to talk about tonight. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Hey, we have a good crowd logging in, so get on the phone, get on your text messages, get on your social media, and let everybody you know that we are here to talk about Oklahoma State football. We're here to talk about Oklahoma State wrestling. We're here to talk about Oklahoma State basketball and anything and everything that you might want to talk about. Paul ended while we're waiting in my best Ted Knight voice. Yes, we are on the air now, so hopefully you're seeing it now, Paul, that we are on the air with OState Daily Live. So, boy, do we have a lot to talk about with the goings-on at Oklahoma State this past week. No doubt about that. When you talk about all of the different signings that have happened at OSU in the last week or so, Doug Meacham hired as the offensive coordinator. Vance Weiss never coached in the state of Oklahoma, but it kind of feels like a homecoming for him. You have a new quarterbacks coach who has good experience, was an analyst at OU last year, that also has been a defensive coordinator at places like Texas Tech. Todd Grantham, who has a world of experience in the Division I level. Now, I know what you're going to say is, hey, the last experience that Doug Meacham had was not good at KU. It was not good at TCU. In his last go-around, he has not been good in over a decade. I can't push back against that. It's been interesting for me because I've gotten a ton of messages, a ton of comments on different posts here or there, and several of them from former players. Of course, I will never use names ever as far as that goes, but I've had mixed reactions. I've had several players who have said, former players that have said, hey, I think this is going to work, and I've had several other players who have been as emphatic about it, talking about the offensive side of the ball, as saying that this was a terrible hire, point blank. And of course, they don't want their names used. If they didn't say one way or the other, but like I said, I'm not going to use their names. So I think it is squarely a wait to be seen, but I'll put it to you this way. Okay, I'm actually personally excited about the Doug Meacham hire. I think he has a great offensive mind. Obviously, I can't deny the fact it didn't work at Kansas, right? I can't deny that it didn't work the last time he was at TCU. And I think if you ask some people at TCU, I think their opinion would be good luck, best of luck with that. I don't think it's going to work out for you. But having said that, I think a lot of coaching, and this goes back to OSU fans ask a lot, hey, why do we have to have, like one of our own coach? And we don't, but still I think in coaching, in playing, whatever it may be, even if it's in the business world, I think a lot of positive production comes from a correct fit, right? So I think if you're comfortable and you fit at one place, I think you can really show off exactly how talented you are or what you're totally capable of. And I think there are other situations to where if it doesn't fit, then even if you are pretty good, you're not going to ever get comfortable and you're not ever going to be able to reach your peak in terms of showing off the type of ability and talent that you have. So here's my positive spin on this. And to be honest with you, there's no reason to go back and rehash all of the happenings of last week. I've stated all my opinions on social media. They are what they are. You have your opinions. I have mine. Opinions are like armpits. Everybody's got them and they all stink, right? So we're not going to go hash and rehash that part of it. So we're going to move forward from here. And to be honest with you, moving forward, there's no reason in my mind, and again, this is just me talking, to be anything other than excited for the future. At Oklahoma State, it got stale. It got to the point to where it was predictable. It got to where it just absolutely needed to be changed. And so I think at the very least, what Oklahoma State fans need to be excited about is the fact that not only did you get change, you got wholesale changes. You got a new offensive line coach with Vance Weiss, who I think is going to work out perfectly. He's coached underneath Barry Odom and done a really good job. Barry Odom's a good offensive coach. Barry Odom knows how to run the ball So if Vance Weiss, and remember, Vance Weiss was the offensive line coach under Brennan Marion at UNLV, which that situation, that one floors me. I've got some information on that I don't really want to go into, but I just don't understand, because I don't even know if I'm at liberty to say anything about it, but I don't understand where that one went. I'll put it to you that way. That was an interesting deal as far as him and Oklahoma State and that kind of deal. But I only say that to say Vance Weiss was the offensive line coach that helped Brennan Marion's offense at UNLV be successful. He's worked with Barry Odom. Barry Odom knows how to run the football very well. So I am very excited about Vance Weiss. I'm very excited about, I think it seems to me like Coach Wozniak might be the only one that's not on the chopping block. I think here's one of the big concerns too, was that whenever you lose a guy like Casey Dunn, who has been not good, but one of the best wide receivers coaches in the United States of America, and then you say, well, the one thing that we're actually doing well on offense is our receivers, and then you take that coach away, now you're like, well, we really are at square zero. So I know Doug Meacham played offensive line at Oklahoma State. Him and Vance Weiss played together, which is really cool, okay, with Coach Gundy, okay? So despite the fact that we lose Casey Dunn, I really think that we found a really good replacement for him in Doug Meacham. I think Doug Meacham is a fantastic coach. Now, has he been a fantastic offensive coordinator? No. But what I'm trying to pitch to you is, I think in this scenario, running it back with some people that he's super comfortable with, running it back with a system and a environment and a setting to where he is going to feel very comfortable, I think we're going to get the best version of Doug Meacham. And we've seen in the past that the best version of Doug Meacham is a really good offensive mind. Remember what he did with Trayvon Boykin, okay? At TCU, TCU was not good at all 1 year under Patterson, and the next year, Trayvon Boykin comes in, and all of a sudden they're really good. A lot of that goes to Doug Meacham. So let me ask you this. What type of quarterback is Oklahoma State going to have? Whoever it may be, okay? Unless they go out and get a portal quarterback that's not mobile at all, and then that quarterback becomes the number one guy, which would be an absolute shock to everybody's system. Unless that happens, you're going to have a Trayvon Boykin type of quarterback at Oklahoma State, of which we have seen what Doug Meacham can do from an X and O perspective with that type of quarterback. So I think we're going to get a great version of Doug Meacham. I think Doug Meacham, approaching 60 years old, is going to be able to tell Coach Gundy to kiss his ass when he needs to, which I think is very important. I think that's one of the things I know I have been bitching and moaning about to no end for several years now, is that just the good old boy hires, the hires that, hey, yeah, I'm not the offensive and defensive coordinators, I'm the CEO, but I still have control over the style of offense and everything we're doing, and I can micromanage the whole thing without actually having to put the work in as far as the detailed, as far as putting the game plan throughout the week. So that's the one part that I think, at least the biggest complaints I hear, maybe I hear those complaints the most because it is my biggest complaint, is that Coach Gundy has hired coaches that have been in a position to where they don't have any choice other than to allow him to micromanage them, right? Okay, you're talking about a defensive coordinator from Gannon. You're talking about Casey Dunn, who was promoted from a position coach. And so now you have Todd Grantham that, yes, is he going to listen to Coach Gundy's opinion? Is he going to take that in? Yes. If Coach Gundy tries to micromanage, then he is going to tell Coach Gundy to absolutely take a hike. Really, I mean, I'd have to think he would. You're talking about a guy that can look at Coach Gundy. Now, however you want to look at his tenure, however you want to look at third and Grantham, however you want to look at the fact that he just got demoted to an analyst at the NFL level, I can't push back on any of that, okay? But you can't tell me that a guy's been in the game as long as he has been and has gotten hired by as many of great organizations as he's gotten hired by, you can't tell me that guy's not a good coach at some level, right? So what has gone wrong at the different levels that he's gotten fired at? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I know he's a very aggressive coach. Coach Gundy's always wanted somebody to be very aggressive, but then also, so Coach Gundy kind of wants his cake and he wants to eat it too. He wants somebody who's very aggressive, but then you get somebody like Brian Nardo who's blitzing a lot. All of a sudden we start giving up big plays in Coach Nardo's first year. Now we're needing to change the defense back. So Coach Grantham, there's no way you can say with his experience, doesn't know football one side in one side and out the other, and his experience can match or overmatch Mike Gundy to where he can look at Coach and say, hey, get the hell out of here. Get out of my room. Okay? You hired me to do a job. Now let me do the job. That is literally the one thing that I have wanted the most, is that Coach Gundy actually becomes the CEO of this program. Go hire two coordinators, whoever they may be, and get the hell out of their way and let them do their jobs and have, obviously you're going to have oversight. That's your job as a head coach, but not oversight to the point to where you're actually the one pinning them into corners to where they don't feel like they can make adjustments one way or the other. DJ Taialavia, this is a guy out of Utah that I have spoken to a couple of my contacts that I've talked to throughout the season as far as people that are in Utah, and I can tell you this guy's a great coach. Okay, this guy's a great coach. He's going to be able to recruit. He's going to be able to relate to young players. I will say this, and I think people are going to disagree with me. I thought Jason McIndoe did a terrific job. I watched and rewatched, and I watched a lot of the H-backs and fullbacks and tight ends, and no, did they ever get thrown to? Of course not. That's a huge gripe of our offense, is that you have Josh Ford, and in the past you've had the NFL guy that came in at quarterback and transferred to Virginia. His name always escapes me. Jelani Woods. And you wouldn't throw the freaking ball to him, right? He goes to Virginia, sets the world on fire. I do believe Jelani Woods actually had NFL time. Meanwhile, at Oklahoma State, all I could hear is he couldn't catch the ball. Well, he couldn't catch the ball because we wouldn't throw it to him, right? So one of the biggest complaints about the way we've been running offense is that we haven't thrown the ball at all to the tight ends, right? And so I don't hold Jason McIndoe accountable for that. But when you watch the tight ends, fullbacks, and H-backs, what we've always called the cowboy backs, I just am very impressed with the way that they position their feet. I'm impressed with the way they use their hands. I'm impressed how they never forget the motions, how they always know the snap count. And then whenever they actually do block, I feel like myself, they played with an edge. So I think Jason McIndoe is getting kind of a raw deal in this situation. But hey, when all hell breaks loose, when you go 3-9, when you go 0-9 in conference play at a place like Oklahoma State, it is what it is. So, hey, Paul, no, I'm not saying we need a portal quarterback. Not at all. I have stated several different times I like the three quarterbacks we have enough to say, hey, let's take whatever NIL money that we have available to us and let's actually allocate it to the offensive line. Let's allocate it to the defensive line. I love our running back room. We just got the transfer from OU. You got Rodney Fields. You got Sese Valahe. I think our running back room is set. We just found out that Dwayne Lofton is coming back. I think Gavin Freeman is going to be fantastic. I think Doug Meacham, the fact that you have to think that, and here's another part that's exciting to me about Doug Meacham coming home, is that he is going to bring back what OSU fans have always been scratching their heads about. At least a lot of them that I talk to is, why in the hell did we ever go away from the air raid that created the 2010 and 2011 offenses that we love so much, right? Well, if you're in that boat and you are one of those people that have not been able to figure out why we ever went away from that, you should be excited about Doug Meacham, because that is more than likely, I mean, that's the style of offense that he's coached. I think he's going to bring back a closer style of offense to that. So having said that, I think we're going to still get very, very good wide receivers. I think it's going to allow us to help run the ball because it's going to spread the field. And another thing Oklahoma State has to start doing again is throwing the ball downfield and stretching those safeties, making those safeties back the hell up so they can't come up and help in the run game like they did all last year. Hey, Wet Blanket, I like our quarterback coach as well. Yeah, Johns is really, really good, man. Absolutely. So I'll be honest with you. As I sit here on Sunday evening at 6:52, hey, was Doug Meacham a sexy hire? Was he like the guy you go, ooh, holy cow, wow, listen, is he that? No. But I'm excited. I'm super excited to have him back. I'm super excited to have Vance Weiss. I'm super excited to have Tia Lavahe, or however you say his name. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Tia Lavia is how you say that name. I'm excited to have him at tight ends, although I do think that Jason McIndoe did a good job at Oklahoma State. I think he's getting a bit of a raw deal. And having said that, I think he'll find a job almost immediately, right? I'm excited about Johns, our quarterback coach. I'm excited about the style of offense I think we're going to be running next year. And I'm also excited about the fact that one of the only quotes that Coach Gundy has given about this offensive thing is that he said point blank, and I think he used these words intentionally, because a lot of what, Coach Gundy shoots at the hip, and he says stuff that probably afterwards he would regret saying, even if he doesn't admit it. But by and large, most of the time, everything what Coach Gundy says is very calculated. So I think he used terminology that was very calculated when he made the comment that I think Coach Meacham and the offensive coaches that we're bringing in are going to bring a fun and exciting brand of offense back to Stillwater. That's what we want. What we want is not to be able to sit in the third row and go, oh, they're getting ready to run this play. And then go, well, if I knew they were getting ready to run that play, then don't you think a Division I coordinator knows they're going to run that play? If I know the 9 Tech is blowing up the mesh point, and because you're not allowing your quarterback to pull, or you're not playing the quarterback that can pull it, then you're allowing one extra player beyond the half player you're talking about in the box to blow up your running game. If I know that's happening, then don't you think that all the other Division I coaches that are coaching against us know are happening? That's where we are trying to get away from, right? And so I think we're going to get away from that. And so the exciting brand part, what I'm saying that to say, not only is that not exciting, it's frustrating as hell, because you're like, surely you guys can't be this obtuse to see what's happening here, right? So I think the one focus of Coach Gundy, first of all, obviously, is to bring in experience and to bring in guys that can stabilize what's happening. A lot of this is going to be stability. You got to get to 7-5 first before you can get back to maybe, we'll see. Hopefully, you can do an Arizona State and turn things around and be in the playoff next year. It's possible in today's day and age, but I think you got to take steps first to get back to just being a respectable, solid program. And definitely he made hires to do that. So not only I think will we not be frustrated, I think we're going to be excited. I think he used the term fun and exciting. I think he used that phrase intentionally to grab Oklahoma State fans' attention because, as we've said several different times on this podcast, above all else, we have seen crappy defense at Oklahoma State. A lot. Going all the way back to 1988. Now, I understand the knock your damn eyes out of the 1980 Jimmy Johnson teams, and then the John Washingtons and the Larry Cokers and the Matt Mongers and all those types of guys, and the Leslie O'Neills. They were awesome defenses back in the Pat Jones days when he was calling the defense, that 3-4 defense OSU ran. But almost immediately after that, from about 1988 on, we have seen defenses at Oklahoma State that haven't been good. But you know what in the years that we've been good, we've always have had is not only have we had a good offense, we've had a fun, wide open, exciting offense. So I think Coach Gundy's number one, here's the game plan, okay? You go get a fun, exciting offense that will play fast and put a lot of points on the board, and just find a defensive coordinator that can just stabilize things. We don't need Todd Grantham to come in here and be the next Jim Knowles of 2021, right? Now, keep in mind, it took Jim Knowles 3 years to get that type of defense. His first 2 years weren't very good, okay? Especially his first year and a half weren't good at all. And so we don't need Todd Grantham to come in and be the next 2021 Jim Knowles, okay? Because that's not going to happen anyways. I mean, Nick Martin's already explained that he's already told everybody he's going to go into the NFL draft. Kendall Daniels is leaving in the transfer portal. This is a start completely over type deal, right? So Greg Brown, Tim Duffy is no longer. You have a new cornerbacks coach. You have a new safeties coach. Greg Brown is moving from an analyst spot to be a safeties coach. Jules Montanar is coming over from East Carolina to be your corners coach. I don't think any of us have any clue what to expect there. What I can tell you there is it can't get worse. Our corners and safeties are good players. The guys at Corey Black is a good player, right? All the Smiths, they're good players. Okay, Lyric Rawls was a good player, not unbelievable, but Trey Rucker is a good player. Kobe Hilton's a good player. And when you watch them cover guys, which seemed like we played man-to-man coverage every down, they just didn't look like they were just well prepared to play the ball. They didn't look like they knew when to turn around. They just didn't look competitive whenever they were playing the ball, right? So I can't tell you a whole lot about Greg Brown moving up from an analyst to safety. I can't tell you a whole lot about Jules Montanar as far as coaching the corners. But my statement to that's going to be, I wouldn't think it's going to get worse, okay? And Todd Grantham knows what defense looks like, okay? Whether you like his experience, at least whether you like the fact they call him third and Grantham at Florida, whether you like the fact that they fired him. Of course, keep in mind that's a Dan Mullen team. And so who knows? When you have a head coach where things are wonky, it throws everything off. So it's a little bit hard to judge. So if you don't like that experience, I can't push back. If you don't like the fact he was just demoted to an analyst with the Saints, I can't push back with that. But I do think Todd Grantham can at least come in to Oklahoma State. Ryan Osborne comes in as a defensive line coach. I think he's a really good coach. Cap Deed, we'll see how he does at linebackers. Joe Bob Clements, I thought, was a really good coach, but did a very poor job. Very, very, very poor job with the linebackers last year. I know Paul Randolph was supposed to be a home run hire. He wasn't any better than Greg Richmond, who's at Sam Houston State right now. That's in a bowl, by the way. So really, I mean, I think if you could run that back, you just keep Greg Richmond and go on about your way. But I think Ryan Osborne is going to be a upgrade at the defensive line coach. As much as of a good coach as I think Joe Bob Clements has been in his career, I think Cap Deed is definitely going to be an upgrade at the linebacker spot. And as far as corners and safeties, who knows, but it can't get worse. So Todd Grantham, who knows? I know that his recent success, whatever, but it can't get worse. So all Todd Grantham has to do, all Ryan Osborne, Cap Deed, Jules Montanar, Greg Brown, all these guys have to do is just stabilize things on the defensive side of the ball. Just make us a decent, just an okay, average, everyday defense. And then let Doug Meacham and Vance Weiss, and yes, Coach Gundy, and the rest of the offensive staff, Coach Johns, let them light up the league offensively. Let them play fast. Let them bring back in the air raid. Let's go back to scoring and scoring fast. Let's go back to having just an average defense, and let's go back to the formula for how Oklahoma State wins football games and wins them at a level that has made us all so happy here at Oklahoma State in the last 20 years. Hey, Clint Hassler, thank you so much for joining. Wet Blanket, thank you so much. Hey, I think we are headed in the right direction. I would agree with you, Wet Blanket. And at the very least, here's definitely what I'm going to say is that Oklahoma State fans wanted change. How many times have we said on this show, hey, just replacing your coordinators isn't good enough? If that new coordinator wants a new corners coach and a new safeties coach, those dudes got to go too. Well, literally the entire staff, other than Coach Gundy and maybe John Wozniak, are gone, right? So we have to be very, very, very excited about the fact that we all wanted change. Well, not only did we get change, we got overhaul change. So I would agree with you there, Wet Blanket. That's a long way to say I agree. We are definitely headed in the right direction. I'll say this. At least we're not going to continue to be headed in the wrong direction. If we do all this and it falls flat on its face and we suck again next year, it's kind of one of those deals to where we tried at least, right? I can't just sit there and go, you know what, this is insane. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. At least we're not trying to act insane right now, right? By doing those types of things. Hey, Wet Blanket likes our quarterback coach Johns as well. Brian Clint Hassler says, will the offense change any? I think you're going to see us go back to the 2010, 2011. I think you're going to see the option type passes. So like in a read option setting, you know, like you have a run pass, that's an RPO. So in the air raid, you have the same concepts like the stick draw concept, but instead of the quarterback drawing it, the quarterback can swing it to a back, or like the scat concept to where, you know, where you swing out a back, you have a replacement route that just kind of runs a little hitch right there at the numbers, right? Actually at the hashes. And if that half player that Coach Gundy always talks about, if that half player goes and takes the back that's swinging out, then you throw it to the replacement route. So that's like an air raid type concept, but like in a read option type running quarterback setting, instead of swinging to the back, like quarterback would keep it, something like that. So I think what you're going to see is more two-way go air raid concepts. It's not going to be a quote unquote, so people are freaking out about the fact that I know that Doug Meacham has said I'm not as high on the RPOs, and here's why. Is because like it's very difficult on your offensive lineman to climb to second level if they don't know if it's going to be a run or a pass, right? So it's harder to block in an RPO system. So if you go and say a PPO system or an RR system, okay, instead of an RPO, and when I say like a pass, like if like that scat, so you're either going to pass it to a scattered out back or you're going to pass it to a guy in the middle. So now your offensive lineman, you're getting the two options. So like the idea of an RPO offense is that you're getting two options and you're trying to make the defense wrong, right? If the defense reacts one way, you do this. If they react the other, you do the other way, okay? So you can get that same deal, but not have both a run and a pass option on your play. You could have a pass and a pass option on your play. You can have a run and a run option, so you can still get the two different reads, but your offensive line knows whether it's a run or a pass. And I think that's the style of offense that Doug Meacham is talking about when he says he's kind of tired of the RPOs, because as an offensive line coach, it's very difficult. And so I still think you're going to see the open-ended two-way goes, but it's going to be two-way pass, two-way run, and I'm very excited about that, to be quite honest with you. Hey, Brian Bailey, again, let's throw our money at our offensive and defensive lines. Ding, 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 ding. Brian, that is a A-plus comment right there. 1,000%. I am totally on board. I think the three quarterbacks that we have, as long as we keep, now if we lose a couple of them, whatever, but I think they're good enough for what we need. Let's save our money. Let's go get some linemen. Let's let Coach Weiss, let's let Coach Meacham, Let's let these guys dig in. Coach Osborne on the defensive side, Coach Grantham on the defensive side. Let's give them some linemen to work with, because the linemen are what give you margin for error. So, like, if you don't have a good offensive and defensive line, Coach Gundy's hinted on this a couple of times, you can still have success, but you have to be perfect because there's no margin for error. So, like, you have to call the exact perfect play that leverages your line to have advantages in certain ways. And if you don't call the perfect play that leverages it right and your offensive line isn't very good, then it's not going to work. What a good offensive line does for you is it flips that. So even if you're in kind of a bad play, if your offensive line's good, you can still make a good play out of it because they can dig you out of a hole. So yes, we have to go get offensive linemen. We have to go get defensive linemen, and we have to start winning games in the trenches, even though I think we are going to go kind of more to an air raid type deal. If you remember Texas Tech back in like the 2007s, back when they had Mike Leach and they were really good, remember their offensive linemen? They were gigantic, huge tanks, and they'd have those big splits, and they'd have these 330, 340-pound linemen, and it was like impossible to get past them. So I think it's going to be interesting to see the style of lineman Oklahoma State goes and gets. I think they're probably going to get a bigger type of lineman that can maul a little bit more in the run game, but then is just kind of a bigger mountain to get past in the pass game. Similar to what Texas Tech did back, in the original air raid days of their offense. So Wet Blanket, let's hit that like button. Yes, definitely. Please hit that like button. I thank everybody so much for coming into these live shows every Sunday night, somewhere around 6 o'clock. It's going to be depending on when I have to take my dogs for a walk, what's going on that day. So sometime Sunday evening, I'm shooting for the 6 o'clock hour, but it'll be somewhere close to that. So thank you, Wet Blanket. Definitely hit that like button. Redeemed Patriot, does changes mean a coach? You might type that again. I'm not exactly sure what that means, Redeemed. Does changes mean a coach? So type that again and we'll answer that question. Taylor Mott, I'm really hoping for the basketball program gets better. We're going to get into some basketball talk here in just a minute. Wanted to get all my football thoughts out first. So let me save that one, Taylor. Let's get into that one here in just a minute. Fiji Vogue 3454. Hey, man, love what you do. Shout out to you. You're a credit to OSU, sir. Go Pokes. Glad to be on here. Well, I can't tell you how flattered I am that you said that. It's always very humbling to get on here and see people show up. We've had great crowds the last 3 weeks. This channel continues to grow. Hey, one thing about it, we give our passionate opinions, right? And everybody, I was talking with somebody on Twitter today. What I want is everybody to have their own passionate opinion, and then we give it in a very respectful way. And we just have absolutely awesome OSU talk. It's not like the social media, hey, all the kind of the sarcastic type of stuff. We want it to be very respectful, but we want it to be very passionate, because one thing that we can say, regardless of whether we agree or disagree, we all have this one thing in common, and we are loyal and true to Oklahoma State, and we are big-time Oklahoma State fans. So thank you, Fiji Vogue 3454, very much for those wonderful comments. Clint Hassler, how many linebackers are they going to take out of the portal? Boy, I'd think 4 or 5. I would think at least you'd have to see exactly what they're going to do with each body type coming back, and that's a good question. But I would think a minimum of 4 would be my guess. And linebackers, I think, are going to be pretty expensive, because those are your level 4 guys in terms of they have to cover a little bit of pass, they have to do the run, they have to make all the calls, they have to be smart and physically impressive as well. So linebackers will not be easy to find. Losing Nick Martin will be a big, big loss. Fiji Vogue 3454, because of the bad press with Gundy, do you think next year will be a lame duck season? Absolutely not. Coach Gundy can overcome. Bad press is not going to play any kind of determination on next year with Coach Gundy. I do think that it pinned him into a certain hole with the type of coaches he could hire. That's what the board did to him as far as making. Now, when I say the board did to him, whoever you think leaked what happened, and we won't get into the big rabbit hole, as far as what the actual details of the meeting, it's irrelevant. The fact that the board scheduled a meeting that has to be by law publicly posted and the agenda had to be posted. At that point, it's public that they are meeting about staff changes, okay? Or staff salaries, whatever, staff, the staff, or whatever the quote was. It was a meeting about the staff. So it's publicly posted, you're meeting about the staff, and both coordinators had already been fired at that point. So if you put two and two together, yes, that's conjecture. Then obviously you can figure out that the board is meeting about the status of Mike Gundy, okay? Matter of fact, the media was running wild with that as it was going on. So that was the biggest problem with that. Regardless of what was leaked and what the meeting was about, it doesn't matter. Now, to the media and press, yes, people are so obsessed about what it was about. The only thing that mattered at that point to the coaches circuit is, oh, wow, Oklahoma State has board of regent members that are meeting right now to discuss the tenure of Mike Gundy? I mean, really? And so I think that right there, that definitely sends waves through the coaching circuit. If you don't want to believe that's your choice. But I can tell you, we'll just leave it at that. So I will say that he was pinned into a certain type of coach, a certain situation he was in, and with the situation he was given, he did a fantastic job. And so from that perspective, I'm super excited about it. So yeah, hey, let's move on to the basketball. The basketball last night was bad. Okay, I mean, it was bad. Here's the thing about the basketball game last night. It reminds you of the football games this year. Like the emotions that you had, like whenever you watched Oklahoma State play football, and like in the Colorado game with 11 minutes to go in the first quarter, you're like, well, this game's already over and I don't want to watch it anymore. When Sam Godwin scored like the first 11 buckets of the game, it was like, damn, guys, I mean, this game's over, right? I mean, you didn't feel like Oklahoma State ever was in that game or ever had any chance to win that game. So that was the disheartening part of last night. Hey, winning and losing, it's the first year of Coach Lutz. It's going to be tough to beat a team like OU, who has an established good coach that's been there for a while. So the winning and losing part of it, whatever. But the part of it that was disturbing to me was that it felt like football in the sense that we were just never in it. And so that's disappointing. You have a chance to get right with Tarleton State coming up before you have Baylor. I think it's Baylor. Or no, it's Houston, I think, is your first conference game here at the end of December. And here's the biggest problem I got with Oklahoma State basketball. And hey, let me know what you think, because I'm not going to lie about it whatsoever. I've done a lot of work in my coaching days on the X's and O's of football. I've coached a lot of baseball and football in my days, okay? And so I've dug into every aspect of both of those sports, okay? And I love the X's and O's and the chalk talk and the strategy of both of those sports. I'm going to be very upfront, and I've got Coach Fears. Will Fears is coming on. He's going to be a new co-host. He's actually a teacher and been a coach, and I think he's an administrator there in the Edmond public school system. He knows all about the basketball program, and I've got him. He's going to be a new co-host that's going to come on once a week with us. As a matter of fact, I tried to get him to come on to our show this evening, but he's going to start coming on once a week. He's going to know a lot more about basketball than I do, so I'm going to be very upfront. I'm going to be able to evaluate like the structure of like the momentum type of things and evaluate all the coach type things. But as far as the X and O's, like what play they're running, like I asked Randy Rutherford in my interview with him, that play that you run the baseline, what do you call all that? I'm not very good with basketball X and O's. So you could tell me Steve Lutz is very good as far as X and O's with the half-court offense. You could tell me that his defense, the way that he structures it, the way that he denies the next pass, or the way that they rebound, you could tell me if their X's and O's are good or bad, and I honestly don't know enough about the structures and X's and O's of basketball to be able to argue with you, right? So here's what I'm going to say about Oklahoma State basketball, where it's at right now. I think with Coach Boynton, I loved Coach Boynton, but they're just the offense, whether you know X's and O's or not. Here's the problem, and this is where you had a problem with OSU football. It's whenever you have guys like me that aren't great with X and O's, and you can look at Coach Boynton's offenses and go, I don't know a whole lot about basketball, but I know that ain't it, right? That's when you need to make a change. So I haven't gotten to that point, obviously, with Coach Lutz. I didn't watch with my novice opinions of the structures of basketball and just watch last night and go, damn, guys, what are you doing? I mean, we don't run an offense. I mean, I didn't look out there and see like disorganization or a team that just doesn't know what they're doing on offense or even on defense for that matter. I didn't see that from a novice perspective. Maybe if you did, if you know more about it, you can leave a comment and let me know what your thoughts are. Here is the only concern I have, and before I get to that, let me also say this. Chad Weiberg's dad was a college basketball coach for a long time. I knew his dad back when he was at NOC in Tonkawa, and very good coach. Chad knows basketball. So all the things I'm saying about the X and O's of basketball, that's not Chad Weiberg. I promise you, Chad Weiberg sits and watches basketball games like a coach. He knows whether a basketball coach has good structures or not. So I totally trust Chad. I just don't see any universe to where if he's capable, if he's given the tools to do so and the ability to do so, I don't see any universe where Chad Weiberg does not get this basketball problem solved at Oklahoma State, because I think he also understands the importance of also having a good basketball program in terms of making money and revenue, right? So the X and O's, I can't really evaluate. Coach Fears will be able to do a better job of that. And by the way, I've also reached out to Barry Henson, and I'm going to have him on the show here before too long. I'm going to have Joe Atkinson on the show. Remember Big Joe, all Big 8 player from the early 80s from Coyle? Going to have him on. Already had Joey Graham. Going to have Victor Williams on. Already had Randy Rutherford on, so check out those interviews if you haven't seen them. So I've gotten long-winded like I like to do to get to my main point, and that is I know Coach Lutz got off to a slow start, or not a slow start, but a late start as far as recruiting goes. And you guys push back however you want on this, okay? This isn't necessarily a complaint. This is more so a question. So I think it was well understood after we lost all but 3 players, okay? Jamyron Keller, Connor Dow, and Bryce Thompson. Those are the only 3 that stayed that I can think of off the top of my head, and the only 3 that have played any kind of substantial minutes. So knowing that, getting the late start, only having 3 coming back, you knew Oklahoma State, this was going to be, the rest of it was all going to be transfers, right? I mean, really one of the I think, attractive parts of Coach Lutz was the fact that he's like an instant fixer. Like everywhere he goes, he instantly gets that team, like Western Kentucky, into the NCAA tournament. So my concern is that he tried to instantly fix Oklahoma State by going and getting the oldest transfers that he could find. Of course, one of them came with him from Western Kentucky, and in doing so, he got a whole bunch of guys on his team, basically an entire team of guys that aren't going to be here next year. So when I look at it and I go, well, he's a first-year coach, he needs time. My question is, time for what? None of the guys on this team this year are even going to be here next year. Maybe Jamyron Keller, right? So that's kind of my question is this the philosophy of Steve Lutz to every year just completely return your lineup over, to completely return your roster over, to go get the oldest, most experienced transfers you can possibly get, to be a one-year quick fix to your program year in and year out? Or was this just happenstance to the fact that he got in late and he got a late start, and because of that, these are the only guys that he could go get? So is this a philosophy of his to where he is going to turn the roster over every year and find the most experienced guys, and we're going to see an entirely new set of faces every year? Or is this just coincidence? Again, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think really anybody has the answer to that, but that's my question. That's my one concern about Coach Lutz, is that even in the face of this year, so if this year doesn't work, and let's say that we're going to beat Tarleton, and you go into Big 12 play 8-3, right? And you have the Big 12 season that we're probably going to have, and you don't make the NCAA tournament, and then all these guys, both of your point guards that he brought in, basically all but like 4 or 5 guys won't be here again next year. Then what? We spent this entire year doing what? This entire first year just kind of at that point has been just kind of complete loss of time, basically a complete waste of time, because you haven't made the NCAA tournament and you also haven't built. That's my biggest concern as far as that goes. And then also I'll say this, the 3 guys that did return, okay, is Coach Lutz a guy that develops? Is he a coach that develops? Or is he a coach that recruits transfers and gets plug and play guys? Because all coaches have X and O's, right? It's the coaches that can develop players into being able to perform that in the past in college, like Coach Gundy's done, have been the best. So is Coach Lutz a coach that's going to develop players? Or is he a coach that's going to go get plug and play players that are older, show them the system, and because they're older and more experienced, they just go run the system? So kind of my question of that is, look at the 3 guys that are returning that needed development. Let's look at their development. Jamyron Keller. I was super excited about Jamyron Keller last year. I think he showed signs of really kind of being kind of a big-time player, right? I don't mean this to be critical or anything, but I don't think he's developed as much as I hoped he would have this year, right? Bryce Thompson is Bryce Thompson. I'm not going to blame anybody for him. He is what he is. He's not a great shooter. He's not Keontae Roberts in terms of being able to score, even though he's not a great shooter. He can get hot, right? But he has to get hot to score. And so you're going to get some decent games for Bryce Thompson. You might get a couple of really good games from Bryce Thompson. And then you're going to get some games to where you're like, oh, man. So, and I don't think Coach Lutz has done this. He's not a guy that you run your offense through. I think what we saw with OU, I still think even today, when you can run your offense through a post player and play inside out, it's just like in football. Whenever you can run the ball, then it's easier to throw the ball, right? If you have good perimeter players, Randy Rutherford will tell you one of the things that made him such a great he was always a great shooter, but what made him so effective was that he had big country to take the double downs where he could kick it back out and give Randy Rutherford some space to shoot it with. So when you can work inside out and you can force the defense to have to honor something in the paint, I think Usman is okay, right? And some of our post players, okay, but obviously they're not guys that attract a whole lot of attention. Until we do that, I think the perimeter game's also going to be much more difficult to work because you don't have to pack it down and you can extend your defense and then guard the perimeter a little bit tougher than you normally would. So that's my very novice. Those are my novice questions about the basketball program. Those are my very novice, maybe evaluations, if you will, my concerns. I'm not as concerned about losing to OU. I'm more concerned about the aspects that I just spoke of as far as the way that this program, the direction it's headed. So, hey, we have had a wonderful crowd this evening. And then going back to the football side of things, I'm just going to kind of finish this thing up with, to be honest with you, we got what we wanted. We got change. We got wholesale change. And for a lot of us, not all of us, another thing that we got that we wanted was Coach Gundy to have the chance to turn this thing around. So in a lot of ways, despite the fact that your 2 coordinators are Doug Meacham and Todd Grantham, and nobody just went, holy crap, whenever they heard those names. Matter of fact, you probably had the opposite reaction, right? Despite that, in many different ways, Oklahoma State got just about everything that we asked for, right? We got a new offensive line coach. We've got a new offensive coordinator. We've got a new defensive coordinator. We've got a new safeties coach. We've got a new corners coach. We've got a new linebackers coach. We've got a new tight ends coach. And we also then got a good receivers coach to replace Casey Dunn. So I think we got, and for a lot of us like me, we got to keep Coach Gundy and see if he still is capable of turning this thing around. So I think here's the overall. I think at the very least, whether you're calling complete BS on everything I'm saying right now, whether you think I am pumping way too much sunshine and unicorns and rainbows into this conversation, which is totally fine, whether you think that or not, at the very least, you have to admit that Oklahoma State was very aggressive in the overhaul of the entire program. And because of that, as an Oklahoma State fan, in my opinion, you need to respect the fact that they did what you asked them to do. And because of that, you need to continue to support the program in whichever way that you always have.